Hi, my name is Kara House, and I'm the creator of Mind Your Mind, which is my blog about psychology and mental health in general. Today, in the midst of the pandemic COVID-19, or also known as coronavirus, I want to discuss with you the cognitive and physical impacts of isolation on your mental health and a few ways that we can possibly combat these negative effects. So first, I want to start by talking about the effects of quarantine on your mental health and your physical health. So I did a little bit of research on this, and I found, according to the American Psychological Association, that isolation can lead to a host of negative physical effects on your body, such as poor sleep, poor cardiovascular health, lower immunity, depressive symptoms, and also impaired executive function. So what does this look like in your daily life? So this could mean that it makes it more difficult to focus. So all of the parents who are at home that are now bringing their work from the workplace into their house, they might have more trouble focusing on the task at hand. And for students, it might be more difficult because they are now having to teach themselves some of the things that they would otherwise be learning from a teacher, and that also might be difficult for them to focus. When you have a crazy household, there's kids running around, or you have a dog, or you have other distractions, it's very difficult to not focus on the task at hand. It can also be very difficult to manage your emotions at this time. There are a lot of things going on, and it might be difficult to process. You might be feeling different emotions at once. You're angry, you're sad, you're upset. It just can be very difficult to manage your emotions as there are many battling to happen at once. It can also be difficult to follow directions. You might feel kind of directionless at this time as we don't have a lot of answers, and it seems like things change every single day, so it can be very difficult to just feel like you have a direction. I've also found many people during this time are struggling with grief and loss. Parents are out of jobs, students have been kicked out of college, and now many middle schools and high schools have also announced that they're going to be at home for the rest of the semester. Seniors are coping with the loss of not having their senior prom, or graduations are online for both high school and college, many colleges. Also, the deaths of family members is an obvious grief that many people are dealing with. I know personally, my grandfather got tested positive for corona, and luckily he's not part of the percentage that has passed away from it, but my heart goes out to all of the families who have been affected and who have lost family members. That's also a very difficult thing to deal with. But I think one of the most important things to remember right now is that every single person deals with grief and loss differently. Not one single person deals with it the same. So some people become very angry when they're dealing with grief. Some people just become completely closed off and don't want to talk to anybody. Some people are very vocal about their emotions and want to talk about it with everyone that they can. It's just important that you don't get upset, and that you're just very patient and understanding with everyone's way of coping, because just because you want to talk about your feelings all the time doesn't mean that your friend necessarily wants to, and you should just respect the fact that everyone has a different way of dealing with things. Another thing that is happening during this time is that there is an influx of anxiety and depression. Isolation is one of the worst things that could happen. When you are depressed or you are anxious, you are manifesting in your thoughts, and isolation gives you the direction to do that even more. Studies are showing that loneliness breeds depression, and this outbreak could see an increase in diagnoses of major depressive disorder, and major depressive disorder needs at least one major depressive episode. And now that we've kind of discussed the cognitive and physical effects that quarantine is having on mental health, let's talk about some of the ways to deal with these negative effects and maybe prevent them from happening. Or maybe if you are negatively coping with it, we can switch those for some healthier coping mechanisms. So one of the most common unhealthy coping mechanisms is isolation, which obviously everyone is being forced to physically isolate, but there's a difference between physically isolating yourself and socially isolating yourself. So there's an American psychologist, his name is Abraham Maslow, and he is best known for his hierarchy of needs. And in this hierarchy of needs, it's a 5-tiered theory about the most basic needs of humans. The first are your basic physiological needs, so air, food, water, all of that. The second are safety needs, and the third are love and belongingness. Now, if you're not getting that fulfillment of love and belongingness, you can feel very alone, and that can just foster into depression. Constant feelings of loneliness and despair can foster into depression. Another unhealthy coping mechanism that I want to talk to you about is catastrophizing, and this basically means jumping to the worst conclusion possible after a minor setback, so taking something really small and blowing it way out of proportion. That can be very easy to do at this time. This can seem like the end of the world, and like news sources are blowing this up, but I want to focus on the fact that many of the sources are focusing on the negatives, and we need to be focusing on the positives. While it's obviously not ideal to be socially isolated and have your whole world turned upside down and have to change your entire schedule, this is a great time to be picking up some new hobbies or old hobbies that you didn't have time for beforehand, and just to be focusing on yourself, because it's so easy to get lost in the work of the world and just moving so fast. And now we can finally sit down and appreciate the time that we have with our families, and we can just foster those relationships even more. The third unhealthy coping mechanism I want to talk about is projection, and this is basically attributing our negative characteristics onto someone else. So, for example, let's say that you didn't get an assignment turned in on time and you're very angry about it. Let's say you yell at your brother because he was making noise and you were distracted, and that's why you didn't get turned in on time. It's not his fault that you didn't get your assignment turned in on time. So basically, projection is literally projecting your internal feelings of yourself onto another person. It's very important to remember at this time that it's no one's fault what's happening, and don't blame yourself for it either. It's just some freak thing that we have to deal with, and we can deal with it together instead of going against each other and spitting our feelings at someone else. So now that we've discussed some unhealthy coping mechanisms, I want to discuss some healthy coping mechanisms that we can swap in to better deal with the stress and anxiety that is coming with this pandemic. One of the things I have found the most helpful for me is establishing a routine. I know at college I had like a very set schedule. I would get up and do the same exact thing every single day, shower, get ready, and go to class. And here it's kind of difficult because when I don't have a routine, I kind of feel like unmotivated to do anything. But if you have a routine, just getting up and even doing one thing the same every single day will motivate you to get out of bed and to do other things that are on your agenda or on your task list. Another important thing to do is exercise. It's very, very easy to remain stationary as you are just in your house and don't feel very motivated to do anything, but just going on a walk, just getting moving and having dopamine and endorphins going through your body is going to make you feel so much better. Also, like I sort of alluded to earlier, picking up some new or old hobbies is a great way to pass the time, and doing something you're passionate about will definitely make you feel happier. I know for me, I love drawing, and that's something that I've kind of fallen out of because school and work are kind of my main priority, so I kind of fell out of that, but now I've been drawing a lot, and it's really great to pass the time. And the most important thing is just staying connected. Staying connected with your friends. Just because you're physically isolated doesn't mean you have to be socially isolated. I'm sure your friends are feeling the same exact way that you are. They might feel alone, but if you're talking to them and you're FaceTiming, texting, social media, there's so many ways to remain connected to your friends and to do it in a safe way. So just important things to remember: avoid unhealthy coping mechanisms, try to swap them out for healthy coping mechanisms. You are not alone in this, but it's important to stay isolated physically, not socially. So make sure you're washing your hands, FaceTiming your friends, and before you know it, this should be over. Thank you so much for tuning in, and subscribe to my blog for more about mental health.